My name is Sister Maria. I am 35 years old, and 4 days ago, on March 31st, 2026, I died. I am writing this from a hospital bed in Denver because the Lord gave me a glimpse of the truth that has shattered my perspective on what it means to serve Him. I was at our community outreach center on the outskirts of the city. We'd had a record-breaking spring blizzard, and the weight of the snow was too much for the old roof. I remember a terrifying groan of wood and steel, the ceiling giving way, and then a cold, heavy darkness. The medical team told me my heart stopped for 9 minutes. To me, it felt like an eternity spent in the most brilliant, warm light imaginable. When I opened my eyes in that other place, the Denver snow and the pain were gone. I was standing in a field that glowed with a color I can't name, and there He was. I have spent my life praying to Him, wearing a habit as a sign of my devotion, but nothing prepared me for the reality of His presence. Jesus didn't look like a painting. He looked like home. His eyes held the depth of the entire ocean, yet they were focused entirely on me. I fell to my knees, unable to speak, my heart hammering with a mix of awe and a strange, holy fear. He reached out His hand and pulled me to my feet. The moment His skin touched mine, I felt every burden I had ever carried simply evaporate. It wasn't just that the pain was gone, it was as if the very concept of heaviness had been erased from my existence. I looked into His face, and I felt a level of honesty I had never known. In the world, we hide behind masks, even from ourselves. But here in front of Him, I was completely transparent. He knew every thought I'd ever had, every secret fear, every hidden motive, and yet looking at me, His expression was one of such profound and unconditional love that I started to sob. They weren't tears of sadness, but tears of relief. I felt like a child who had finally been found after being lost in a dark forest for years. "Maria," He said again, and the way He spoke my name made me feel like I was the only person in the universe. "You have been very busy. You have run many miles and spoken many words in my name." I nodded, still unable to find my voice. I thought of my life in Denver, the long hours at the shelter, the early morning prayers, the endless committees, the constant drive to do more, be more, and save more. I had always thought that was what He wanted. I thought my exhaustion was a badge of honor, a sign that I was truly pouring myself out for the gospel. "But you have been running in circles," He said gently. His voice was like a melody that filled the air around us. "You have been giving people what you think they need, but you have not been giving them what I have given you. You have been building a monument to your own effort, and it has left you empty." He turned, and the scenery around us began to dissolve and reshape. It wasn't like a movie screen. It was like being pulled into a memory that was more real than the present moment. I saw myself just a few months ago, back in November. There was a large fundraising gala for our new medical wing. I saw myself in my best habit, my cross polished, walking through a room filled with influential people. I looked radiant. I looked like the perfect image of a devoted nun. I heard myself speaking to a group of donors, telling them stories of the poor we served. But as I watched, Jesus changed my perspective. I wasn't just seeing the scene, I was feeling what was happening inside my soul at that moment. I felt the sharp, cold needle of pride. I saw how I was carefully choosing my words to make sure I sounded both humble and impressive. I saw how I glanced at the other sisters to see if they were noticing how well I was handling the crowd. I saw how I hungered for the nods of approval and the whispers of "she's such a saint." "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them," Jesus said, His voice echoing through the vision. Matthew 6:1, "Maria, look at your heart in that room. Who are you really serving?" I felt a wave of shame. "I was serving myself," I whispered. "I was using the poor to make myself look good." "When you seek the applause of men, you have already received your reward in full," He replied. The vision of the gala faded, replaced by the sterile, bright lights of our community soup kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon in January. The smell of industrial-sized cans of green beans and simmering broth filled my senses. I saw myself behind the counter. I was moving with incredible speed, ladling soup into bowls, handing out bread, and nodding briskly. I looked like a model of efficiency. Then, a young boy named Noah walked up. I remembered him. He was maybe 8 or 9, with a thin jacket that wasn't nearly warm enough for a Colorado winter. He had a smudge of dirt on his cheek and eyes that seemed to hold a world of quiet sorrow. In the vision, I watched myself hand him a bowl. I didn't even stop my conversation with the volunteer next to me. I was complaining about the rising cost of napkins. I never looked Noah in the eye. I didn't see the way he hesitated, wanting to say something, or the way his shoulders slumped when I moved him along to get to the next person. I treated him like a number, a task to be completed so I could get to my paperwork. People look at the outward appearance, Jesus reminded me, and I felt the weight of 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. But the Lord looks at the heart. Maria, what did Noah need that day? He needed a friend, I said, the realization breaking my heart. He needed to know he wasn't invisible. You were so busy doing my work that you ignored my presence standing right in front of you, Jesus said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded sad. Noah didn't come for the soup. He came because he was lonely. You gave him food, but you withheld the only thing that truly matters. If you give everything you own to the poor, but you do not have love, it is nothing. You were a clanging cymbal that day, Maria. I saw how many times I had done this. I had turned charity into a machine. I had prioritized the ministry over the people. I had been so focused on the logistics of helping that I had forgotten the humanity of those I was supposed to be helping. I saw that I was treating the people in the line as inconveniences to my schedule rather than brothers and sisters. The scene shifted again. Now we were in the back of the parish hall. It was a rainy afternoon in February. An elderly man named Robert was sitting at a table by himself, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee. Robert was a difficult man. He was loud, he often smelled of stale tobacco, and he had a habit of interrupting meetings to tell the same stories about his time in the Navy. Everyone in the parish tried to avoid him, including me. I saw myself in the vision, walking toward the door, trying to sneak past him so I wouldn't get stuck in a 30-minute conversation. Wait, Jesus said, and the vision paused. Look at him, Maria. Really look. Suddenly, the walls of the parish hall seemed to peel away, and I saw Robert in his tiny one-bedroom apartment. I saw the stacks of old newspapers, the single chair, and the silence that hung over the room like a shroud. Then I saw him drop to his knees by his bed. His movements were slow and painful. I watched him pull out a small, tattered notebook. He opened it, and I saw my name written there, along with the names of the other sisters and the priest. I watched him pray. He didn't pray for himself. He prayed for my health. He prayed that the Lord would give me strength for my work. He prayed that I would be protected from the cold. He spent over an hour interceding for me, his voice trembling with sincerity. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first, Jesus said softly. You thought you were the one helping him, Maria. You saw him as a burden, a distraction from your important duties. But in my kingdom, he is a giant. His prayers were the shield that protected you during your darkest days. While you were out trying to impress the world with your service, he was in the secret place, doing the real work. I felt so small. I had judged Robert by his outward appearance and his social awkwardness. I had assumed I was the one with the wealth and he was the one with the need. But the truth was the opposite. He was spiritually rich and I was a beggar. I had been arrogant, thinking my position and my activity made me superior to him. I called you to be a servant, not a supervisor, Jesus said. His eyes were like fire, but a fire that cleaned rather than burned. You have been trying to manage my grace instead of simply being a channel for it. You have been judging who is worthy of your time and who is not. But I tell you, whenever you did it or failed to do it, for the least of these, you did it to me. I looked down at my hands in the vision. They were busy, always moving, always grasping for the next task. But they were empty of true, humble devotion. I had been serving an image of myself as a holy person, and in doing so, I had missed the Lord who was walking beside me in the form of the broken, the lonely, and the annoying. You are tired, Maria, because you are carrying a weight I never asked you to bear, Jesus said, pulling me back into the radiant field. You are trying to save the world, but I have already saved it. I didn't ask you for your efficiency. I asked you for your heart. I didn't ask you to be successful. I asked you to be faithful. I stood there in the light, feeling the truth of his words settle into the marrow of my bones. I had spent 35 years trying to earn his love through my performance, never realizing that I already had it. I had been a Martha who was so worried about the kitchen that I had forgotten to sit at his feet. "There is more I must show you," he said, and I felt the air begin to shimmer again as we prepared for the next vision. "You must learn the difference between being a blessing and being a barrier. You must see how your own lack of boundaries has actually hindered the work I wanted to do in others." The light around us deepened, turning from the soft glow of a meadow into a shimmering golden clarity that seemed to pull the truth out of every shadow. Jesus stood beside me, his presence a steady anchor as the scene began to shift once more. This time, the familiar streets of Denver appeared, but they felt heavy with a different kind of sadness. I saw my younger sister, Elena. She is 28, bright, and has a laugh that can light up a room. But for the last few years, her life has been a cycle of emergencies. In the vision, I saw myself in my small office at the parish. The phone was pressed to my ear, and I could hear Elena's voice, frantic and tearful, telling me she was about to be evicted because her car had broken down and she couldn't get to work. I saw the look on my own face, a mixture of exhaustion and a desperate need to fix it. I watched as I took money from my own meager savings and even dipped into a small discretionary fund meant for the homeless to pay her rent. "She is my sister," I whispered to Jesus as we watched the scene unfold. "I had to help her. I couldn't let her end up on the street." Jesus looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw a reflection of the true Elena that I had been too afraid to acknowledge. He showed me what Elena did after I paid that bill. I saw her sitting on her sofa, scrolling through her phone, buying expensive clothes she didn't need, and calling out of work the next day just because she didn't feel like going. I saw that my help hadn't actually solved her problem. It had simply removed the consequences of her choices. "You think you are being my hands and feet by rescuing her," Jesus said, his voice firm yet filled with a sorrow that vibrated through me. "But you are actually standing in my way." Do you remember what Paul wrote? "If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat." 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Maria, there is a profound difference between a person who cannot find a way and a person who refuses to look for one. I felt a cold realization settle in my chest. I had spent years thinking I was the only thing keeping Elena from disaster. "Laziness is not just a habit, Maria. It is a spiritual sickness," he continued. "When you constantly step in to soften the blow of her bad decisions, you are teaching her that she doesn't need to trust me and she doesn't need to grow. You have turned your mercy into a shield that protects her from the very lessons I am trying to teach her through her struggle. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to let someone feel the weight of their own life. Poverty of the spirit often begins when we refuse to apply the strength I have given us." The vision shifted, showing a long line of emergencies I had funded for Elena over the past year. I saw how my constant intervention had stunted her. She was 28 going on 15 because I had never allowed her to become an adult. I saw that I wasn't helping her. I was keeping her trapped in a state of perpetual childhood. I was exhausted, and she was unchanged. "You cannot carry what I did not ask you to carry," Jesus said. "You were meant to love her, not to replace me in her life." Before I could even process the weight of that truth, the scene changed again. We were back at the outreach center, but it was several months ago, during a busy clothing drive. I saw a man named Samuel. He was a middle-aged man who came to us frequently. In the vision, I saw myself handing him a high-quality winter coat that had been donated by a parishioner. I had spent hours sorting through the clothes to find the best one for him. I watched as Samuel took the coat. He didn't look at me. He didn't say thank you. Instead, he complained that the color wasn't what he wanted and asked if we had any brand name shoes instead. I saw my own reaction. I forced a smile, apologized, and went back to the storeroom to look for shoes, feeling a bitter knot of resentment tightening in my stomach. "Do you remember the 10 lepers?" Jesus asked. I nodded, remembering the story from Luke 17. He healed 10, but only one returned to give thanks. I asked where the other 9 were, Maria. That question wasn't for their benefit. It was a reflection of the state of their hearts. Gratitude is the mark of a heart that is open to grace. But ungratefulness is a sign of a heart that believes it is owed the world. He showed me the months of interactions I'd had with Samuel. I saw how he walked through our doors with a sense of entitlement, as if every person there was his personal servant. He would take the food, the clothes, and the bus passes, and then go outside and mock the very people who had given them to him. You think that by enduring his insults and his demands, you are being patient, Jesus said, but you are actually nourishing his selfishness. By never setting a boundary, by never asking him to respect the gift, you are letting him stay in a prison of his own ego. 2 Timothy 3:2 warns that in the last days, people will be lovers of themselves, ungrateful and unholy. Ungratefulness is a blockage, Maria. It stops the flow of grace. When you pour your life into a person who refuses to acknowledge the gift, you are pouring water into a cracked jar. It will never be full, and you will eventually run dry. I saw how my unconditional giving to Samuel had actually made me more cynical. I had become bitter toward everyone because of the way he treated me, yet I felt a false sense of holiness for putting up with it. I saw that my lack of boundaries wasn't helping Samuel. It was actually making me a less loving person. Stop giving your best to those who only wish to trample it, he said. I gave thanks before I broke the bread. Gratitude is the key to increase. Those who will not be grateful for the little will never be able to handle the much. You must have the wisdom to know when your help is actually feeding a person's pride. The scenery blurred and then sharpened into a small cafe in downtown Denver. I saw myself sitting across from a woman named Isabella. Isabella was a mother at our parish school, and she had been coming to me for months with stories of a terrible domestic situation. She told me her husband was abusive, that she was broke, and that she was terrified. I had spent hours crying with her, praying with her, and even finding her a place to stay and giving her money for legal fees. But as Jesus held my hand, the vision expanded. I saw the truth that I had missed because I wanted so badly to be the hero of her story. I saw Isabella meeting her abusive husband in the parking lot after our meetings. I saw them laughing together as they looked at the cash I had given her. I saw that the entire story was a fabrication, a performance designed to pull at my heartstrings and open my wallet. The Lord detests lying lips, Jesus said, his voice echoing with a divine authority that made the vision of the cafe tremble. Proverbs 12:22. He showed me the intricate web of lies Isabella had woven, not just for me, but for 3 other churches in the area. She was a master of the tragic story. You wanted to see the best in her, Maria, and that is a beautiful thing, he said gently. But you abandoned the spirit of discernment I gave you. You were so afraid of being judgmental that you became a partner in her deception. 2 Corinthians 11:14 warns that even the enemy can look like a being of light. The most dangerous liars are those who sound like victims. I saw how much money and time I had diverted from people who were actually suffering in silence to fund Isabella's lifestyle of deceit. I saw a family in our parish who really was facing eviction, but I had told them we were out of funds because I had given the last of the discretionary money to Isabella the day before. Wisdom must lead your mercy, Jesus told me. If you do not use the eyes I gave you to see the truth, you will find yourself supporting the very wickedness I have called you to oppose. You are not meant to be a person who can be easily tricked. You are meant to be as wise as a serpent and as innocent as a dove. When someone uses a lie to get your help, they are not asking for a blessing. They are asking you to join them in their sin. I felt the weight of my own foolishness. I had prided myself on being the one who always believes in people. But Jesus was showing me that my refusal to see the truth was actually a form of spiritual laziness. It was easier to just give her the money and feel good about myself than it was to do the hard work of investigating the truth and holding her accountable. I didn't call you to be a victim of those who play games with the truth, he said. I called you to walk in the light. And in the light, there is no room for shadows and half-truths. The vision of Isabella faded, and I felt the intensity of the light around us grow even stronger. I felt stripped of my illusions, of my false sense of goodness. I saw that so much of what I called service was actually a way to avoid the difficult work of setting boundaries and seeking true discernment. There is one more thing you must see, Jesus said, and his face became very serious. You must understand the nature of the people who do not just take, but who seek to corrupt the very ground you walk on. The intensity of the light around us suddenly shifted. It didn't become brighter, but it became more focused, like a magnifying glass. Jesus led me through the golden air, and I felt the weight of his words about corruption. The scene that formed before us was one I remembered with a deep sense of failure. It was the parish office again, but the atmosphere felt thick and heavy. I saw a young man named Liam. He was in his late 20s, handsome and full of energy, a recent convert who had volunteered to lead our youth outreach. In the vision, I saw myself sitting across from him. I watched as he dismissed the suggestions of our older volunteers with a sharp, arrogant wave of his hand. He was changing the curriculum, ignoring the safety protocols we had in place, and speaking about himself as if he were the only one who truly understood the gospel. I saw the faces of the other volunteers, people who had served for decades, looking hurt and sidelined. But in the vision, I saw myself stay silent. I gave him a nervous smile and told him to keep up the good work, because I was afraid of conflict. I told myself I was being encouraging, but Jesus showed me the truth. Pride goes before destruction, Jesus said, his voice resonating with a power that made the vision of the office tremble. A haughty spirit before a fall, Proverbs 16:18. Maria, you saw his arrogance. You felt the division he was sowing in the community, but because you wanted to be liked, you allowed him to trample over the humble. He showed me the result of my silence. I saw the youth program falling apart as the older, wiser volunteers walked away. I saw Liam leading the young people toward a version of the faith that was all about his own personality and power, rather than the cross. I saw that by not correcting him, I wasn't being kind. I was being a coward. I was allowing a proud heart to poison the work I had spent years building. I oppose the proud, Jesus said, quoting James 4:6. When someone operates in arrogance, they are not just fighting their neighbors, they are standing in opposition to me. Pride is a closed door, Maria. When you try to guide a person who believes they already have all the answers, your words are wasted. Do you see a person wise in their own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for them. Proverbs 26:12. I watched as I tried to gently mentor Liam in the vision. Every time I tried to offer a small correction, he would get defensive and turn it back on me, making me feel like I was the one being unsupportive. Instead of standing firm, I would back down. I saw how this cycle drained the life out of the parish. You cannot force wisdom on someone who refuses to be a student, Jesus explained. Matthew 7:6 warns you not to throw your pearls to those who will only trample them. Some people are not looking for growth. They are looking for a stage. When you give your energy and your platform to the proud, you are helping them build a tower of Babel that will eventually fall on them. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back and let the consequences of their own ego humble them. I let Nebuchadnezzar live like an animal until he realized that the heavens rule. If I had to humble a king, why do you think you can save a man from his own pride by being nice to him? I saw that Liam was the seventh type of person I had been struggling with. Between the self-seeking pride of Sister Jessica, the loneliness I ignored in Noah, the quiet holiness I overlooked in Robert, the laziness I funded in Alina, the ungratefulness I tolerated in Samuel, and the lies I believed from Isabella. I was a woman who had lost her way. I was a servant who had stopped listening to the master and started listening to the demands of the world. Jesus stopped walking and turned to face me fully. The field of light seemed to expand until there was nothing but him and me. He took my hands in his, and I felt a surge of strength that I knew I would need for what was coming next. Maria, he said, and his voice was a balm for my tired soul. I am sending you back. Your work is not finished, but it must be different. You must understand that wisdom is the most important thing. Proverbs 4:7. Your help must be led by my spirit, not by your guilt or your need to be seen as a saint. There is a difference between being a blessing and being an enabler. I set boundaries. I walked away from crowds when they wanted to make me king for the wrong reasons. I spoke hard truths to those who were hypocrites. If I, the Lord of all, set boundaries, why do you feel you must be limitless? He leaned closer, and his eyes seemed to hold the stars. You can love people without rescuing them from themselves, You can pray for them without allowing them to drain the life out of you. You must be a good steward of the time, the money, and the energy I have given you. There are people in Denver right now who are truly hungry, truly ready to change, and truly humble. But if you give all your bread to those who are only playing games, you will have nothing left for the ones who are truly waiting at the gate. He touched my forehead, and the warmth was so intense it felt like I was being reborn. When you sow into the right soil, you will see a harvest that will amaze you. When you help those who are ready to listen, you will see lives transformed. Be wise, be discerning, and trust me to handle the ones who refuse to hear you. The light began to swirl, and the sound of the field, a soft, melodic humming, grew louder and louder until it was the only thing I could hear. I felt myself being pulled backward through the darkness, through the cold, until I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest. I woke up in the hospital on April 1st. My lungs felt like they were on fire, and the steady beep of the machines was a harsh contrast to the music of the other side. The doctors told me that the roof collapse should have ended my life instantly. They couldn't explain how I survived 9 minutes without a heartbeat and came back with no brain damage. They called it a medical anomaly, but I knew it was a second chance to do things right. It is now April 4th, 2026. I am still weak, but my mind is clearer than it has ever been. I know that when I leave this hospital, things will have to change. I will have to tell Alina that I can no longer pay her rent. I will have to tell Samuel that he cannot treat our volunteers with disrespect. I will have to find the courage to speak the truth to people like Liam. I know they will be angry. They will say I have lost my compassion. They will say I am not the good Sister Maria they used to know. But I am not the same person. I died. And in those 9 minutes, I learned that true love is not about making people comfortable in their dysfunction. True love is about reflecting the heart of Jesus, which is both incredibly merciful and perfectly just. I am no longer afraid of being disliked. I am only afraid of wasting the grace I've been given. I'm not saying we should stop helping. Jesus never said that. But he showed me that we must help with eyes wide open. We must use the discernment he gives us to protect the resources he has entrusted to us. If you are reading this and you feel exhausted, if you feel like you are pouring your life into a bottomless pit, I want you to stop and breathe. Ask the Lord for wisdom. Ask him if you are planting seeds in a concrete sidewalk or in good tilled earth. Because when you give to the right people, you will see the breakthrough you've been praying for. When you help those who are truly ready, you will finally see the transformation that only he can bring. I'm going back to the work, but this time I am not carrying the stones. I am only carrying the bread.